listening to the parable of Jesus, it may appear at some point that it is not easy to agree at some point. Like the king made an invitation to the wedding banquet of his son. The people invited to come failed to come. So he sent his servant to bring people from the streets and from the roads to come. So we are expecting that the people who were taken into the banquet were people just picked from the streets. But in the story, we are also told when the king came and found somebody who was not wearing a wedding garment, he was enraged and he asked that he be taken out of the banquet and thrown out. The question is, as the people were picked from the street and from the old, are we not expecting to get somebody who will not have a wedding garment to be there? And because of this discrepancy, people come out with two schools of thought. First school of thought agree to the story as it is, but there is another school of thought who thinks this parable of Jesus was a combination of two existing stories. The first story was the king inviting people to the wedding banquet of his son, and the people refusing to come. So that is one story. They rejected the invitation. They failed to honor the invitation. So that is one story. And then the another story is that a king inviting people to come to the wedding banquet of his son, and people came in according to the dress code given to them. But there was somebody who refused to dress properly according to the wedding code, and therefore he was thrown out of the wedding banquet. Whatever may be the case, we can still get the lessons that Jesus is giving to us from the story. Jesus is talking about a king who prepared a banquet, and that king is God. Now, when we speak of kings, kings are people, they have power. Kings are rich. Their laws or their orders must be respected and obeyed. So the orders of God, Jesus is asking us that, or telling us that it must be respected and be obeyed. We cannot ignore what God is asking us to do in this life. And by the story, Jesus is also telling us God has done his part. God is always doing his part. He provided the meal, he provided the occasion, and he invited people to come. He sent people to remind them to come to the wedding banquet. So God was doing all the parts he was supposed to play. And then the people who were invited, instead of responding to this goodness of God, they failed to respond to this goodness of God. They ignored God. They did not respect him. They did not obey him. And when people were sent to remind them of the occasion, they even chose to beat them and kill some of them. One may ask, why should those people did that? They did that because God has given us a choice. But God expects us to use the choice we have to take a good decision, to respond to his goodness in order to receive his favors. The excuse that people gave were of no merit. It could not be compared to the goodness, the gifts, the favors that God intended to give to them. And we continue to do that all the time. We give excuses, failing to respond to God's goodness. And we are always finding excuses not to be good Catholics, not to be good Christians, not to be good persons. We are always finding excuses to be that. But anytime we do that, we take ourselves away from the favors of God. And looking to the second part of the story, the man was there without the wedding garment. And even if it is to be deduced from the first part of the story, it also shows that even though God is inviting everybody, God is inviting people from the street, from the roads to come. The people who went to the wedding banquet they prepared themselves and got themselves wedding garments in order to be there. But this guy was stubborn. He refused to take a good preparation, to take the garment in order to go to the place. So this also is telling us God is good, God is merciful, God is kind, but we should not take the mercy and the kindness of God for granted and say that because God is good, He is forgiving, He is merciful, and we live life anyhow. This is also telling us, especially in the life of the church, that as we come and approach God in the sacrament, in all the sacraments, the sacrament is a gift, is a blessing, favors given to us from God. And God is inviting all of us to come to Him in the sacrament. But as we approach God, as we encounter the Lord in the sacrament, we also need to make adequate preparation for ourselves before we come to encounter the Lord in the sacrament, especially by going for confession. By the use of confession, we get ourselves clean and we prepare ourselves enough to put on wedding garments that may qualify us to be at the wedding garment. So Jesus is telling us God is good, God is merciful, God is kind, but God is also expecting us to respond to such goodness of God in order to prepare ourselves adequately for the blessings and the favors He gives to us in this life. May we continue to pray and ask God to inspire our thoughts and hearts so that we appreciate His goodness to us and respond favorably in order to share these blessings He makes available to us.